Last week, Cam Rising announced he's retiring from football. So now that we're removed from the announcement, what will his legacy with Utah football be? We're breaking it down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can head over today and check out America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook has you covered. And if you head over to FanDuel as well, one thing you can do is you can get right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is JT Wisrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Andrew Crowley. Andrew, when you're talking about this Cam Rising legacy, last week we were all kind of shocked by his retirement. Well, not shocked, I should say, but it's just been a long time coming. Like, finally puts it out of nowhere, his retirement. And then you step back and go, okay, so what is Cam's legacy with Utah football? I think it's unquestionably one of the best players, not even quarterbacks, to come through this university. We'll do a quarterback ranking at some point another day, but just when you look at what he accomplished, and it even goes beyond the field, like the way Kyle Whittingham talked about his leadership style. I know the last 2 years kind of casted a dark cloud over Cam's legacy, but when you can take a step back and look at the things he accomplished that really very few other Utah quarterbacks, and in some ways no other Utah quarterbacks did, he's absolutely one of the all-time best. And honestly, I would love it if he was the next guy they put into the Ring of Honor. I know it might be a little early, but hey, Colorado opened the door with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Why can't we do it with Cam Rising?
Yeah, I mean, a transformational player for the University of Utah, right? Like, you can't talk about the new heights that Utah football has attained the last couple of seasons without first mentioning Cam Rising, right? Back-to-back Rose Bowls, back-to-back Pac-12 championships, really beating USC, turning that into a bit more of a rivalry than it was before. Just, I mean, the accolades just are over the top for this guy. I absolutely agree. They need to do something in the near term to honor him, and also in the long term as well, because there's been no other player quite like him at Utah. The way that he was able to rally the fan base, the heights that he brought this team to. The ending is terrible. The ending is remarkably unfortunate, but that shouldn't at all change the impact that he had on this program.
Isn't it crazy how few college QBs get a Joe Burrow season? Like, and just in general, you see like Trevor Lawrence, right? Breaks through his first year, wins it all, and then things don't go to path. Now with Cam, it was different because his was injury related, but this even relates to the pros. I just say those guys never seem to get the fitting send off they deserve. And I still hate that Cam didn't get to go out his way, even if he didn't make it in the NFL. He deserved a shot. He deserved an opportunity. John Canzano had that story about how, there were all those Pac-12 quarterbacks that ended up being first-round picks. And at the time, Cam Rising was the one who was the conference champion out of that group of elite Pac-12 quarterbacks. So he deserved a shot. I hate that he didn't get that shot too, but he is a guy that I loved what you mentioned, Andrew, about when we talk about the heights that Utah is in, and like the reason we can say, hey, this is a team that has won conference championships and can do so again. Utah's not known as the team that gets on the doorstep and couldn't break through. They were before Cam Rising, but post Cam Rising, they're known as a team that can get it done. And his legacy is a large part attributed to that success.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big, the big reason, I think, or at least one of the big reasons why they were on, primetime national television for both of their games against Florida was because Cam Rising was a centerpiece of that, right? Like somebody that the TV stations could market and say, hey, let's watch Cam Rising against Anthony Richardson. Let's watch, Cam Rising against Caleb Williams, right? Like it's not, hey, let's go watch Brant Keithy against somebody, not to take anything away from him, but the quarterback is the guy that drives the bus here. And Cam just brought more eyeballs to Utah football than just about anybody since, Urban Meyer and Alex Smith.
It's absolutely true. I was really, sometimes you forget how much of a known commodity Cam Rising was outside of Utah. Utah football is known, but it's not as known at the national level as some of the other brands are. So the stars, they don't get the same level of star power. Cam Rising is different, though. Cam Rising was on College Game Day when they came here in 2023. And when Cam Rising made his said he was going to be retiring, all of the outlets, Pete Thamel, all these guys, talking about, like, it's a big deal. It's a big story. I see his highlights, see his moments getting posted like that. And I think that's the other thing that's cool too, is he didn't just leave a legacy at Utah. He's genuinely, the fact that Cam Rising is a name that you can say in other college football stadiums and people know who that is, that's cool, Andrew. That's just cool.
Yeah, his retirement was a major news story, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the week, in the offseason. And that just speaks to the sort of the power of his name, the power of his brand, and what he's brought to Utah football these last several years.
And he's brought so many unforgettable memories. It was crazy how it worked out. Last week on Monday, I did the show with Brian Brown, and we talked about the best moments of like several Utah legends. But of course, that of recent memories, the guys who moved on, that class that accomplished a lot. And of course, we talked about Cam. So we're talking about the 2-point conversion. We're talking about so many other moments throughout his career that he just made something happen. That might be the number one thing, Andrew, that I think about when I think of Cam Rising too, are the moments. Cam Rising was very rarely, I'll actually say, the most talented quarterback on the field when he was going against someone else. That other person could probably throw the ball a little farther than him. But Cam always found a way to deliver, whether with his arm, whether with his legs. He just had that ability to come through. He's not Tom Brady, but that was Tom Brady. Tom Brady always found a way to win and put his team in a position to succeed. And that is what Cam Rising always did. And that's why he's not the most talented quarterback that Utah has. Think about Isaac Wilson, was this 4-star recruit, all these things, right? But Cam Rising was a guy who stepped up and delivered when it mattered most. And that is why, to me, I want to see him in the Ring of Honor as soon as possible.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but somebody after the recent NFL draft posted a list of the guys on that Ohio State team that went pro and the guys on that Utah team that went pro. And you could argue that maybe outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Covey's punt return, that Cam Rising's run where he looked like he was stuffed and then he does a little spinneroonie and he's gone, that was one of the top 3 highlights of that entire game. And so, yeah, he deserves the Ring of Honor. He deserves all of the flowers, all of the accolades that are going to come his way. And he deserves to be remembered as a transformational player at the University of Utah. And all of this injury stuff needs to just be kind of cast aside as far as his legacy goes, in my opinion. My humble
1,000%. Especially because it wasn't, he wanted to be out there. Like, why are we going to hold it against him for wanting to be out there, wanting to come back and try to take another step and do some more incredible things with this Utah team? Like, that's where that shouldn't be held against him. The injuries are terrible and it's awful luck. And that's what it came down to be. So love Cam. I'm just grateful that he was a Ute, that I got to watch him. He's a huge part of my senior year. And then my first year, kind of post-college, I got to cover him. And that was just an incredible experience watching Bad Moon do his thing. And I'm going to miss going to Rice Eccles games and not games in Rice Eccles Stadium and not hearing Bad Moon Rising playing. So that's something that we'll definitely miss. But Cam, a legacy that is among the best to ever come through. I've said before, I think he probably is on the Mount Rushmore in terms of his legacy, what he did. If you want to say there's Utes that had a higher ceiling at the NFL and all that, yeah, but hard to argue with what Cam did while he was in school. Speaking of guys who are in school, Utah's basketball team has several that are enrolling now. The men's basketball program picking up a lot of additions in the portal. We're going to talk about some of the more recent ones in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. With Monarch Money, if you just ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. They have fantastic insight. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save even more. So also that all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Easy collaborations too are something they offer, where Monarch Money makes it easy to manage money with your partner. You can track shared personal accounts and set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. You can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps no spaces, at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All caps, no spaces, monarchmoney.com. You enter that, then enter the code LOCKEDONCollege, 50% off your first year with Monarch Money today. All right, Andrew, back here with me. Talk about some of the recent additions that Utah basketball made. Andrew, there's a lot of guys to love, especially the recent ones, right? We've talked about some of the other guys that came in earlier window like that, but I want to give you the first. Which recent addition is most excited you?
I really like, oh gosh, his first name is escaping me, but McHenry from Western
Yes,
Kentucky.
Don McHenry.
Thank you. Goodness. I have a basketball podcast. You think that I would, be able to pull Don McHenry?
Run a hoop spot.
That's right. Yeah, anywhere where you get a podcast. But yeah, Don McHenry, I think he's a guy that really, really excites me out of Western Kentucky. 17 points a game, kind of a ball dominant guard. Some people think he's a wing. I kind of pencil him into that point guard position, although we'll see. It'll be him and Terrence Brown, at least, right now, the way that it's kind of working out. But, he's just a guy who can get himself into the lane, can get you a bucket when you need it. He has a pretty nice floater game as well. And so, he's one of the two Hilltoppers that have joined the program. The other one is Babacar Faye, who's a guy that was on pace for a massive season last year for Western Kentucky. Scored 28 in their opener against Wichita State, 16 against Kentucky. That's a team that's not full, or that's full of some decent players. I think we would all agree. And so the two Hilltoppers, I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Don first as the guy I want to talk about. I mean, he's a guy to me, and I totally agree with you, by the way. Like, if you said right now, who's Utah's starting point guard, I would roll with Don. I mean, a guy who can score off the dribble, attack the basket. That was something that was so exciting for me to see, a guy who can attack the basket and finish inside. Utah's lacked that at the guard position for the past couple of years. So I think that's one thing that really excites me with Don, too. A crafty finisher, guy, a nice handle, has a great chance to start a point guard, can finish well at the rim, a good athlete, too, can hang in the air for some of those tough finishes as well. So this is a guy that I'm really excited about. And then you mentioned Faye as well, as teammate, who was on pace for that monster season. I mean, just a lob threat, a guy who can space the floor a little bit too, like knock down a couple threes as well. So you like to see that, but someone who runs the floor well. That's one thing right away, Andrew. All of these guys we're going to talk about, Utah is so much more athletic this year than they were in the past. And I think when you're trying to compete with the best teams in the country, cough, cough, in the Big 12, you got to get more athletic. And Utah was able to do that. Faye is a guy like that. Good motor, can finish around the rim. Not much of a, guy you throw it down and he's going to have some post moves, but like, hey, if there's a defender in his way, he can squeeze it up and through, can finish over top too. This is just type of guy to me. He's a guy that I think will come off the bench, but you mentioned it. Based on how he was trending at the end of the year, he could be a starter for this team next year, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, right now there's sort of a big hole in the middle for the Running Utes. No player on the roster above, 6'8", 6'9", a lot of, big athletic guys that can run the floor, but no real true post presence in the traditional way. And it'll be interesting to see, what kind of player Alex Jensen and his staff add in that center position. But right now, yeah, I think you'd look at him, maybe Okonkwo. One of those two guys would be your starting center if they had to roll a team out on the floor, tomorrow.
Yeah, and Utah's had the Ezra Sars, they have had the Lawson Loverings, and before that they had the Brandon Carlson. All those guys who could throw it down on the low block and get a bucket. What's Alex Jensen coming from? The NBA. Who were his centers most recently? Rudy Gobert, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford. Those aren't guys you throw it down on the block to. So I do think maybe his style of thinking could be, Andrew, as well, as we want to play more an NBA style. We want to get up and down the floor. We want to run. We want to have rim protectors, and we want to play at a fast pace, a high tempo. And we're not as interested in throwing it down on the low block and seeing someone grind out a possession. If they can do that, maybe that's a luxury. And a couple of these guys, I think they could develop that in their game. And we'll mention a guy like Traore in a second. I think he could do a little bit of that. But I do think that could be part of Alex Jensen's design is they want to play at such a fast pace. They do not want a lumbering big man in.
Yeah, you think about the Big 12, right? And you take all of the teams and you kind of throw them all into a pot. You don't necessarily immediately think of, oh, it's a league with a bunch of guys that play with their back to the basket, right? Like it's more of a modern type league, less than like what the Big 10 does, right? The Big 10, you could see a big lumbering big man in those leagues, a Zach Edey, somebody like that, but we may see a lot more in that lob game because we've seen it from other teams, with a guy like Norchad Omier at Baylor, obviously Keita, what he did at BYU, guys that are not necessarily asked to do a whole lot, but be available when that ball goes up, near the rim, flush it down. That's what you got to have.
Yeah, I think another guy who can play around the rim, flush it down, things of that nature is I apologize if I mispronounce his name, Seydou Traore, the Iowa transfer that Utah's got. This is a guy, another athlete. He can shoot a little bit too, attacks the rim well. With rolling as he can be a lob threat too. A guy who can set screens, a lob threat as well too. Can hit some mid range pull ups, and he also he makes the right passes. That was one thing I liked about him too. Was a couple of nice feeds in there as well. I think this is another guy who's got a really good chance to start on this team too because of the different ways that he can score a little bit. The passing, the size, the rebounding, and just another year of growth and development, having to battle against other Big Ten guys. I look at Traore. I'm a big fan of this one. I don't know if he's my favorite of the three, but he may be, Andrew. He may be.
Oh, I love his game. He came in to Iowa this past season from Manhattan, where he had averaged 12 points a game in a lot of playing double the amount of minutes that he ended up playing at Iowa. So he goes up a level and his production backs off. But if you look at what he did at Manhattan and you look at what he did at times at Iowa, he had, I think, 15 in a game against Maryland and another big game against Ohio State. Like, he had those moments where he flashed. And, I think one thing that we can say about this Alex Jensen team is it's going to be all about opportunity, right? A lot of guys that are stepping into roles that are bigger than what they've played before, but they've got the athleticism, they've got the know-how, and now they're going to have the opportunity to really step in. And Traore is another guy that's going to have that chance for the running Utes, and I love what he brings to the table.
He will. He'll have a chance. This next guy I want to talk about, I think, is the most talented player on Utah's roster, but he comes with massive off-the-court question marks. And I talked with Zach Blackerby, who hosts Locked On Auburn, so the equivalent of what we do here, who knew Jakai, who was familiar with what was going on with Jakai Howard, the guy who all transfer, got in a fight on plane. There was some other stuff. Like, it was just concerning. But this is a guy, he's still a really good get for Utah if he can figure that stuff out. I mean, a tremendous athlete. And like I said, I think if you just look and say, who's the most talented player on Utah's roster, it's probably Howard. Can he put it all together, though, Andrew? That'll end up being the question.
Huge question. And I'm not going to go as far as to say as like, they will go as he goes, but it's going to be close, right? Like, he's a guy that you can pencil in as maybe you're starting 3, maybe you're starting 2, depending on, what kind of size you want in your lineup. And he's another guy that can elevate above the rim. He's got all of the tools, right? There's a reason why he went to Auburn out of high school and Bruce Pearl, right? But now the question for him is going to be, can he put it all together? Can he listen to the coaches, right? Can he be a good teammate? All of those things. I don't think that Alex Jensen would bring in, somebody he didn't believe in, and Coach Chills didn't believe in their ability to do that here, especially in year one when he wants to make an impression, wants to make a splash, wants to try to get Utah back to the tournament. So I'm going to go positive here on Jakai Howard and say he will put it all together and he will be an impact player for the Utes.
Some teams, when you're trying to find the X factor, can be hard. Like Utah football, we could do Dampier, but you could say, well, maybe you need the receiver Meriwether to step up. Maybe it's Wayshawn Parker or the run game. I don't know. I think it's no doubt. Like, Howard is by far the biggest X factor because of exactly what you said, Andrew. He raises the ceiling at his best. And like, a lot of these other guys could be good, but like, Howard's potential of what he could be is so far beyond these other, and they're really good players. I like them, but Howard was supposed to be a guy, like, I think when he was brought into Auburn, maybe not even year one starter per se, but like maybe the following year. And let's not forget how far this Auburn team went. So Howard, a guy with that immense potential. And it's because of that potential, like, if we're going to do the starting lineup right now, I do have Don as my starting point guard too. I have Elijah Moore at the 2, the Syracuse transfer they brought in, 4-star, didn't play a ton there either. But then I went Jakai Howard at the 3, and then I went Dawes at the 5, Seydou at the 4. That's what I'm kind of going right now. We mentioned the need at 5. What do you think of that lineup, and what changes would you make right now?
Yeah, so I actually did this on my most recent podcast. I took a stab at the lineup. This, of course, is before Faye, showed up in the commitment list. So I had McHenry as your starting point guard. I went with Terrence Brown Jr. as my 2, Howard at the 3, Dawes at the 4, and then Okonkwo at the 5, the transfer in from Akron via Pitt and North Carolina. I would probably at this point switch him and Faye. And have Faye be the starting 5, but I don't think you could go wrong with really any of those 3, Faye, Okonkwo, and Dawes there at your starting 5. It gives Utah a lot of versatility in the front court. It, again, doesn't require them to have a back to the basket guy, and it opens up the lane. And so I love the possibilities, though. Moore would be great. Trey Hoare would be great. It's a good problem that they've got right now, right? That you can't necessarily nail down a starting five here in, mid-May.
It's a very good problem that this Utah team has. But one thing they do still need to add, as we both said, is probably getting that starting five or another five. If they want to play small and athletic like this, I think they can win. It just could be a problem in some of those games when you look at the size they could be giving up to some of the other Big 12 teams. I'm very curious too to always see, like, hey, you got some guys that are just coming from all the different levels of basketball. So will the high recruits that couldn't crack time on the top teams beat out, or the guys who were able to play a ton last year? Who's going to win out? That's always a fun battle to watch year in and year out. And it's not just something the men's basketball team's trying to figure out, but the women's basketball team as well too. We're going to talk about the Utah women's basketball team additions and where a former star ended up landing in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by Post District. Discover Post District, home to 4 of Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings: the Register, Post House North, Post House South, and the 801 Flats. Each residence offers its own unique take on luxury urban living with features like waterfall kitchen islands, floor-to-ceiling windows, vaulted ceilings, and spacious patios, plus walk-in closets. You can enjoy premium amenities, including the city's largest residential gym, a year-round pool, golf simulator, year-round pool and golf simulator. That'd be cool if they were together, but year-round pool and golf simulator too, plus massive TV wall for sports watch parties. And if you like this show, you'd probably get to be into that, plus more, all anchored by a one-of-a-kind community. Step outside and find yourself immersed in Salt Lake's hottest dining and nightlife scene with award-winning spots like Urban Hill, Men's Show Ramen, Level Crossing, Melancholy Wine Bar, and Sunday's Best just steps away. Whether you're looking for a studio 1, 2, or 3 bedroom, penthouse, or you can find your perfect home today, visit liveatpost.com or call 801-590-6247. Mention this ad for the exclusive incentive too. Once again, if you're looking for a studio 1, 2, 3 bedroom or penthouse, you can find your perfect home today. Visit liveatpost.com, call 801-590-6247. Mention this ad for an exclusive incentive when you check out what the Post District has to offer you today. Gianna Kneepkens is in the portal, and she's not just in the portal anymore. She committed to UCLA. This one hurts, Andrew, but I get it. I think when you're saying who has a better chance to win a national championship year in and year out, especially when you look at how many of Gianna's teammates were moving on. And I'm not even saying like some of those additions, like you're like, hey, maybe Utah could even get better in those spots. But she had a special bond with her teammates. I appreciate her giving this university 4 years. I have no problem with her going to UCLA. And honestly, I'd love to see her make a deep run, win it all next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with going to UCLA, right? I mean, the 4 programs that she was looking at were UCLA, South Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, all pretty well-established women's basketball programs. You know, Lynn Roberts and UCLA's coach are like best friends. Lynn is now in LA, right? Like the minute that Gianna hit the portal, you could kind of connect some of the dots and see that UCLA was probably going to be the destination all along. And so I think the only thing that you can do in this situation is wish her well, because you're right. She gave so much to the university, was a big part of that Sweet 16 run a few years ago. And, Gavin Peterson's kind of in a situation here where he's got to retool a little bit with so much production walking out the door. And so I know we're going to get into the portal ads here as well, but I think the timing worked well for her. Timing probably works well for Utah women's basketball to just kind of hit the reset button a little bit, go with some of their younger players and their portal ads and see what they can do.
Gianna Kneepkens didn't come back, but Lainey White ended up coming back. She went to just 1 year at Virginia Tech and came back. She averaged 9 points a game, 3 rebounds a year ago, scored in double figures 14 times. And she was someone who was back on Utah a couple seasons ago. So I'm excited to see what she can do now that she's coming back to Utah, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, she went to Virginia Tech. She got a lot of playing time, which is exactly what she needed, what she was missing here at Utah, being behind a player like Gianna Kneepkens, like Kennedy McQueen and Ines Vieira. And so she comes in with a ton of experience, a lot more starts in the ACC. That's, not a bad basketball conference, as we all know. And so she comes in and really is going to step, I think, right into a role where she can have a major impact on this team.
Someone I'm curious as well if they might have a major impact is Evelyn Otto, I believe it is, the 6'3" forward from Latvia, ends up coming over here, and I'm very interested to see what she's going to be able to do. And Denver East High, she averaged 16 points a game, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. So is a player who maybe takes a year to acclimate? It could be, but also could be someone who comes in right away and makes a difference. I mean, 6'3" ain't too shabby.
Yeah, I mean, what was this team missing most of this year? Size, right? I mean,
no Peely.
you had No Peely. May Torre was a really nice player, but kind of a different sort of player. And Kyra Evans was out with an injury. And so I think the combination of Kyra Evans, Cameron Mufau, and then this Evelyn Otto that's coming in from my backyard here in Colorado is it's going to really help solidify the front court for Utah. And I think we're going to see a lot more post play out of the Utah women's team this year.
I think that would make a lot of sense too. And I'm curious to see what this team does. Andrew, it's way too early, very early outlook. Now, I won't say way too early because we're starting to see what this roster will look like, but this is going to be, the Big 12 is still a very tough women's basketball conference. We saw last year, Utah kind of finished middle of the pack, got upset by Indiana in the first round too. But I do think this is a team that, like the men, like going into last year, I'm like, yeah, Utah women's basketball, a tournament team. I think they're now in a similar position to the men's team where I think they'll be fighting for a tournament spot based on what they lost. It's hard to lose a senior class that was the best senior class that women's basketball team had in recent memories. It's hard to just lose that and then just roll right back in like nothing happened.
Oh, for sure. And, when you kind of break down their season, right, they had some really nice wins, but no wins against the top 5 in the league. And so this is going to be a season where, not only are they replacing a lot of production, but they're going to have to really, work to kind of break through and beat some of these teams that were ahead of them in the standings, a team like Kansas State, TCU, even Oklahoma State. Right, they're going to have to beat one or two of these teams to establish themselves as that upper tier of the Big 12.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We'll see what we'll see what Coach Peterson's team is able to do come this late fall, winter, just like the men's basketball team as well. Andrew, always appreciate making the time to hop on. Please let everyone know where they can check out more of your stuff at.
Yeah, the Running Hoops podcast, wherever you get a podcast. Right now, social media is a little bit iffy for me. I got locked out of my Twitter account for crying out loud. And so I've got to figure out what to do there. There may be a new handle coming here soon, but definitely check out the podcast over wherever you get a podcast. Really appreciate it.
Andrew, thanks again for making the time.
Thanks a lot.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow to talk about the latest in Utah athletics. We'll hope to see you then.